Hello everyone. I'm very happy that you have come back to my channel. After the unfinished plans in the previous episode, after conversations that had yet to reach a conclusion, first, everything remained in its familiar rhythm. There were no unusual signs, no details that would raise suspicion. The phone calls still happened regularly. The conversations still flowed smoothly like in the early days. The construction plans were discussed with full steps. Timeline, progress, workforce, everything was presented clearly. There was no ambiguity, no confusing gaps. Everything was laid out as if ready to begin. Promises were made, not exaggerated, but enough to build trust. There was no sense of urgency, no pressure, just process, moving exactly as planned. But after only a short time, not long, yet enough to create change, the first signs began to appear. Not obvious at first, not a sudden break, but very small changes, so subtle that they could easily be missed if one didn't pay attention. Appointments were still arranged, but no longer kept as before. They scheduled, then postponed, not once, but repeatedly. The reasons were explained, but no longer specific, no longer detailed, just vague, general responses. Promises still existed, but were no longer followed by action. Promises, then silence. Not a refusal, not a denial, but a gap between words and reality. Phone calls were no longer answered quickly, no longer felt like someone was always there on the other end. Sometimes the phone rang for a long time with no response. Sometimes just a busy signal. No explanation. Messages were sent, but no longer received immediate replies. No clear answers. No definite confirmations. Gradually, the waiting time became longer, from minutes to hours, then to entire days. A change, not too big, but enough to make one start thinking. Hoai was the first to notice, not because he immediately doubted, but because he was used to stability. What was happening was no longer the same as before. He didn't say it right away, didn't jump to conclusions. He simply observed quietly. Every small detail, every sign was noted, and then feeling became clearer. Something was wrong. Not just a guess, but an instinct born from change. No need for immediate proof, but enough to make him unable to ignore it. He didn't wait any longer, didn't continue relying on phone contact. He took initiative and went directly to the office. No prior notice, no appointment, simply to check, to confirm that everything was still normal. But what he found was nothing like he had expected. Not an explanation, not a meeting, not a normal delay, but an emptiness. The door was shut tight, no sign of activity, no lights inside, no voices. The signboard had been removed. No name, no trace, as if that place had never existed. No one was there. No staff, no receptionist. No sign at all that this had once been an office. No explanation. No notice. No sign of relocation. Only silence. A silence that was not normal. Not the usual quiet, but an emptiness that sent chills down the spine. That moment, nothing more needed to be said. Everything collapsed. Not in a loud way. No sound, no crash, but a collapse that was unmistakable. Tin stood still. No immediate reaction. No questions. No words. Just standing there, looking at the emptiness in front of her, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. That money was no longer just a number, no longer just an expense. It was hope. It was the future. It was everything she had gathered, not in a day, not in a short time, but over a long process, little by little, for her child, for something she believed was worth it. Now, all of it seemed taken away, without a trace, without an explanation. She blamed herself, not blaming others immediately, but looking back at herself, for trusting too easily, for not questioning, for not stopping to think longer, for being too quick. In such a big decision, the atmosphere became heavy. No one spoke. No one knew where to begin. But this time, Hai did not let things pass, did not let the silence continue, did not let emotions take over. He became calm, not because he didn't know what to do, but to think carefully, not rushing, not acting on emotion. He needed time to organize everything, to see clearly what was happening. A moment of silence, not long, but enough. Then he made a decision, without hesitation, without going in circles. Call Hung. His voice was not loud, but firm. The direction had been chosen. Tieu San's brother, a police officer, not the first choice, but the necessary one. First, Tieu San hesitated, not because she didn't trust, but because she didn't want to trouble him, didn't want to involve others, didn't want her problem to become someone else's burden. But when every path seemed blocked, when no direction was clear, she understood. She had no choice left, no other way. Hùng listened to the entire story, did not interrupt, did not question aggressively, did not give immediate judgment. He simply listened, fully, without rushing to conclude, without making assumptions, just quietly, reviewing the contract, checking every detail, every clause, every related piece of information, as if searching for something that could clarify what was happening. And from there, everything began to move in a different direction. And then, after reviewing every detail, after cross-checking every piece of information, after connecting everything that had happened, Hung paused for a moment, not because he lacked data, but because he had seen something no one wanted to face. He looked up. His eyes no longer carried the calmness from before. His voice lowered, clear, direct. There are signs of fraud. Just one sentence. Not long. No further explanation. But enough to send a chill down Hai and Tieu San's spines. No longer suspicion. No longer a vague feeling, but a conclusion that instantly changed everything. From that moment, the atmosphere was no longer confusion, no longer unanswered questions, but turned into a clearer direction, a search. No more waiting, no more hoping for a response from the other side, but taking action. Hung and his team began verification. Nothing overlooked, nothing done carelessly. Every piece of information was rechecked. Every account was traced. Every address was verified. No longer looking at the surface, but going deeper. What once seemed clear now began to reveal gaps, inconsistencies, detail that no longer aligned. And then, layer by layer, the truth began to appear. Not suddenly, not all at once, but piece by piece. Enough for them to realize that everything was far from simple. This was not a normal company, not a legitimate operation, not just people doing business, but a group of individuals who had built a cover, a carefully constructed cover, from outward appearance to communication to every consultation. Everything was arranged, not by chance, not spontaneous, but intentional. To deceive, not just one person, not only Hoai and Tieu San, but many others. People who had also trusted, who had also hoped, who had also believed they were starting something meaningful, and then, just like them, lost everything. Their disappearance was not an accident, not an unexpected event, but part of a plan prepared in advance. The timing, carefully chosen. The escape, calculated, leaving no clear trace, no easy path for investigation. But what made things even more tense was not just the fraud itself, but the timing. As Hung continued checking, continued tracking, he discovered something. This group was not just disappearing, they were preparing to leave. Not just moving, but leaving completely. A departure, meant to end everything, could not let everything end like this. The moment of confrontation finally came, not in a special place, not somewhere unfamiliar, but in a place that seemed completely ordinary. Nothing that drew attention, no obvious signs. Yet right there, those people appeared, no longer the same as before, no longer polished, no longer smooth in their words, no longer confident. Everything that once created trust was gone. All that remained was avoidance. Eyes that could not meet directly, evasive answers, words no longer clear, no longer logical. And when cornered, when there was no way to continue hiding, they tried to escape, no longer maintaining appearances, no longer controlling behavior. Only instinct remained. The atmosphere turned tense, not outwardly dramatic, but heavy in every moment, as if the air itself was being compressed, making it hard to breathe. And then, at that very moment, the police moved in. No warning, no time to react. Everything happened very quickly. No gaps, no delay. Were restrained immediately. No time to react, no time to run. Others tried to escape, but failed. Each person was controlled. Every action was stopped. The space, from tension, turned chaotic in an instant, then regained control. But just when everything seemed to be over, when everything that needed to be done was done, a detail appeared, a detail that made everyone freeze. The mastermind was not there, not among those detained, not present. That moment, he had already disappeared. No one knew exactly when he left. No one clearly saw that moment, only that he was gone. And that meant the story was not over. What had happened was only part of it. The money was not guaranteed to be recovered. What was lost could not yet be confirmed. The house still existed only on paper. The designs, plans, had not yet become reality. And the journey of Hoai and Tieu San did not end here. Seemed it had only just begun. A journey no longer simple, no longer about building, but about facing reality. Would they overcome this challenge? Would the one behind everything be brought to light? Would what was lost have a chance to return? And the dream of a home, could it still continue? Or would they have to start over again? Stay tuned for the next episode to find out what happens next. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts below. See you again in the next episodes. After those lingering looks still filled with thought, Hoai and Tieu San finally made a decision, no longer stopping at imagination, no longer just passing words, no longer vague ideas, but a choice that marked a beginning. They decided to start a new journey, a journey not only about changing their living space, but also a shift in how they looked at the future. No longer plans on paper, no longer sketches that only existed in their minds, but things gradually becoming real. A house, mentioned many times before, now was no longer a distant concept. It didn't need to be large, didn't need to impress anyone, didn't need to show off or prove anything. Simply a place where Tieu San and little Ivy could truly feel at home. Place where returning no longer felt temporary. Place where every small corner carried familiarity. Place not for comparison, but for belonging. In the first days, when they began, everything felt quite smooth. No rush, no obvious obstacles, no sense of pressure. Step by step, everything followed a clear process. They began searching for a design and construction company, not choosing randomly, not deciding in haste, but with careful consideration. From initial information, from recommendations, from what they observed. And then, a name was chosen, a well-organized office, a neat working space, everything arranged with clear order, a professional approach, each step explained, every detail presented, not complicated, not confusing, but instead, creating a sense of trust. The advice was given slowly, no pressure to decide immediately, no urgency imposed, just suggestions. At first glance, everything made sense. Each idea, each option, was presented clearly, no ambiguity, no unclear gaps. And then, the design was revealed, not just simple lines, not lifeless shapes, but a space, clearly imagined. Tieu San looked at it, unable to hide her emotions. Her eyes changed, no longer filled with hesitation, no longer calculating, but with excitement, feeling hard to conceal. Every small corner, shown on the design, seemed to come alive. Each yard was not just empty space, but a place to step into, to feel. Each garden was not just greenery, but part of life itself. Everything matched what she had once hoped for. Not something distant, not idealized images, but things very close. A place with greenery, not for decoration, but for comfort. A place with sunlight, not too harsh, not too bright, but warm enough. A place with space, where Ivy could grow, without being confined. Not just a child, living inside a house, but a child with room to grow. In peace. Tieu San looked at it, said little, but her eyes spoke everything. Hai stood beside her, not interrupting those emotions. He didn't speak at length, didn't give complex opinions. He simply watched how she reacted, watched how she focused on every detail. He realized this was not just a design, but something very important to her. He didn't need to ask more, didn't need confirmation. He simply nodded, a soft nod, like a silent agreement, not agreeing with the design, but agreeing to continue this journey with her, that he would be there to turn all of this into reality. No promises needed, no declarations required, just certainty. And then, after all the discussions, after reviewing every detail, after moments of quiet thought, a decision was made. No more hesitation, no more reconsideration. They chose to move forward. The contract was placed on the table. No longer words, no longer verbal agreements, but a clear commitment. Every clause, every line, was carefully read. Nothing overlooked, nothing taken lightly. Caution remained. Then the signatures were placed. A simple action, but carrying deep meaning. Not just confirmation, but a beginning. A deposit, not small, was transferred, no longer in their hands, but now part of the plan. A step had been taken. No turning back. No longer a plan, but reality. And from that moment, everything entered a new phase. Fate, where everything would begin to be tested.
Xin chào mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến với mọi người video về câu chuyện của Tiểu San và Hải nha mọi người. Trong video hôm nay thì mọi người cũng biết là từ những tập trước là Hải và Tiểu San, tức là Hải đang có ý định là sẽ xây dựng lại căn nhà mới cho Tiểu San và Ivy ở với nhau, Ivy ở với nhau cho nó kiểu ấm áp hơn và tiện lợi hơn. Vậy thì liệu diễn biến tiếp theo sẽ ra sao khi mà tất cả cái số tiền mà để xây dựng căn nhà mới hiện tại thì đang bị lừa? Hải cũng đang rất là đau đầu cho vấn đề này. Tiểu San thì đau lòng và tiếc tiền nữa. Còn Tiểu San thì đã nhờ Hùng là anh trai của mình để giúp đỡ. Vậy thì liệu diễn biến tiếp theo sẽ ra sao? Mình mời mọi người đón xem ở những tập tiếp theo ở trên kênh của mình nhé. Và nhớ là hãy theo dõi kênh, bật chuông thông báo lên để không bỏ lỡ bất kỳ video nào nhé. Mọi người cứ nghe thì tiếng ở đây mình đang nuôi một bé vẹt, xong bé nói suốt nó vậy á. Cảm ơn mọi người rất nhiều, hẹn gặp lại.